Welcome to the KFA podcast, where our mission is to keep faith alive by kicking ass.
Sweet. Well, we decided to sit down just as a little group here today, a little bit different than the other interviews that we've done. We want to take it in a little bit more of a faith direction. And I just think from the stuff I've shared on stage today, and as well as what Ricky shared and what I know Ryan's entire brand is about in a big way, I want to first start off by just like, if you want to touch on some of the stuff that you shared from stage today and what your journey is, and then bounce over to you and kind of set the tone there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, just to reiterate what I said, I was laying in bed, literally dying. Have I told you this?
Yeah, I think we were talking about it a couple weeks ago.
Like, I mean, I was laying there and I was looking at the ceiling. I was ODing, and I literally was seeing Jesus. Like, Jesus was right there in my ceiling, and I was like, God, if I wake up tomorrow, I'll never touch another sip, another drug, nothing. And at this point, I tried to quit drugs for a long time, and I'd be like, all right, I'm done with this. This is over. This is bad for me. I'm not feeling like I'm ready to move on. And I'd quit. And about an hour later, I'd do it again. This went on for years and years and years until this moment happened where I'm about to die. And if I wake up, I'll never touch anything ever again. So I wake up and I'm like, wow. And this is when I was in really incredible physical shape, and I think that's probably why I woke up. But better than you are now? Yeah, really? Yeah, way better. I threw
So many
everything.
People last night were like, "Man, he is a lot more ripped in person than I thought." So
well, that all happened like in the last couple months.
Start hanging out with me.
But yeah, like when I woke up, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I threw everything away. And I called my wife, now wife. We were broke up because we were fighting so much, like going out and drinking and stuff. Like, we started out like partying, having fun, laughing. Everything was awesome. And then we started arguing, and we broke up, and then all that happened. And yeah, it was a moment, and that was 10 years ago from just about a month ago, right? And yeah, and so. That was a big turning point for me. That was the first year I did 100 deals. And then a couple years later, I wrote 2 books and started speaking, writing, coaching, and doing social and everything else. And no, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. I just love, and I mean, this is why I wanted to ask you guys this, because I know you guys probably answer a lot of the same questions all the time. But for me, what's the most interesting thing is just hearing the real story behind it, because I feel like everyone, especially everyone with a large level of success like you guys have, seems to have a testimony that other people need to hear. But I don't know if you want to take over a little bit and share more about.
Yeah, obviously I talk a lot about faith and just different pieces of content, and it's really kind of become bigger than I anticipated. And really, I guess, to this point, I never anticipated like trying to be like a faith guy on social media or anything. I just, one day at one of our events, this is maybe a year and a half ago, somebody goes up to me and they said, "Ryan, I love that you're bold with sharing your faith. I have a question for you. I look up to you as somebody who shares their faith, in the marketplace. Who do you look up to?" And that really made me think about something. And I was like, I don't really I don't know that I have a role model like on social media that's really doing it, bold, living life the right way, doing the things that I believe they should be doing, right? Like, I look up to a lot of pastors. I look up to, guys like that. But as far as like the pure entrepreneurial world, there's not a ton of them. And there are a ton of great Christian entrepreneurs. They're just not like on social media making content and all these videos. And so that really stuck with me, because it was kind of like God was speaking to me that moment, like, yeah, that's the problem. And if you're not going to do it, then who is? And from that point forward, I realized that I had a bigger thing to do now, and I had to be even more bold. And so that's when we started incorporating faith even more into our events. You know, we started holding worship services, and I started bringing a pastor to every event. And now we got this thing called the Kingdom Summit next month. You know, like my team thinks I'm crazy because first off, it's already crazy enough that we hold WealthCon every quarter, and that's 1,000 people. That's like really hard to do every quarter. And then I'm like, you know what? Let's throw another one in between those, but for Christian entrepreneurs, and I want 2,000. And they're like, all right, whatever, man. And then, you know, it's like that one's next month, first time doing it. And, you know, I got amazing guys like Ed Milet. He's going to speak for free just because he believes in the mission. And, you know, big pastors like Tim Ross and, you know, these Christian influencers and creators like the Girls Gone Bible, their podcast is blowing up, Ruslan, and, you know, so many great people. And like, I'm excited about that event probably more than I am about WealthCon. There's not even a pitch. You know, I'm not going to make anything from it. It's just purely for a nonprofit with Wealthy Kingdom. So, you know, I don't know where God's going to take all of this. You know, the more I've found is that I guess just the more skills I've developed over time, the more he's like, all right, now what are you going to use them for? You going to use them for just, you know, building yourself up, or are you going to build the kingdom up? And, you know, that was where I just realized, like, man, dude, there's this massive need in the marketplace for revival, because I've just seen it myself the last, call it 10 years of being an entrepreneur. You know, I see so many divorces, so many people just walking away from faith or never even trying to, you know, be a part of it. I see so many people, you know, with the grind mentality of, dude, it's just like, I got to go on in my business. Everything else must suffer for me to be successful. And, you know, truthfully, with most of these entrepreneurs that have been feeding this message, some are Christian, some are non-Christian, but it's like almost every single one has the same message. And it's a problem because it's just not true.
What's the message?
The message is that you got to sacrifice everything to be successful in business, right? You got to give up, you know, time with your kids. You've got to, you know, not have a morning routine and just start working 24/7. You got to, you know, for example, a guy like Tony Robbins, like, you can have just the power within you and that's enough. And it's like, no, I don't believe that. You know, I believe you need the Holy Spirit to have the true power within you. That's the only power I want. I don't want my power. You know, my power, my flesh is sin. So, like, I just think there's a lot of false messages out there, whether people realize it or not, and nobody's able to speak up about it, whether they just aren't theologically, you know, strong enough yet, and they don't even know it's the wrong message.
That's what I was going to say. They don't even know it. They don't realize.
Yeah, they just don't realize it's wrong, and they don't have a strong enough understanding of faith to know, or they just haven't been convicted yet. And it's tough when you hear everyone telling you the same thing, and there's so few examples of it not working out that way, right? Like when they look up to all their idols,
yeah,
it's like everybody did it this way. They're all saying the same thing, therefore it must be true. And it's like, well, yeah, you know, everybody said that, you know, Jesus couldn't do this, but he still did it, right?
Then you get programmed into thinking this is the way it has to be done. And you end up going down that road, and next thing you know, you're burnt out, and you're nowhere closer to the goal than you were when you started this journey.
You and I talked about that last time you were in Vegas. You know, just like people just get in this total mindset of not even looking up. Like, they keep their head down, and they just keep doing the same thing over and over again. They look up years later, and they're like, "Dang, dude, like, was it worth it?
I thought I'd be more further along after all this grinding."
Yeah, and so, you know, the point of a testimony is that you actually lived, you know, a certain way, and it brought about a certain result, right? And so for me, it's like, I just realize no matter what valley, whatever mountaintop or anything I'm on, I have a duty to keep living out, you know, this life that glorifies God, good or bad, like as far as what I'm going through at that time, because that's going to be my testimony however many years down the road. And people are going to be able to look back at that and say, oh man, dude, he was going through a lot of stuff and he still stayed faithful. He still had obedience.
You can have you can have a hell of a testimony.
Yeah. And that's the point, right? You can look back from your story from 10 years ago now, like, dude, I was addicted to drugs. I was doing all this thing. Now look at me 10 years later because I was obedient in one moment. You know, what if you weren't obedient in the one moment?
Yeah.
You know, you'd probably still look up 10 years later doing the same crap you've always done, living the same. And that's unfortunately the most of the world.
Yeah.
They're working the same dead-end job, doing the same crap. Their marriage still sucks. Or they're divorced now and they're like, man, why are there no good women out there? It's like, no, dude, you're the problem.
Yeah. And I think we shared this with you maybe in an email, but we have a common friend, though I definitely don't know him as well as you do, but Erwin McManus.
Yeah.
And we were at we were fortunate enough to get to go to Ed Milet's house for a kind of a private event type deal a couple years back, and that's where we came across him. And man, so much of what I talked about from stage today is directly from him. It completely changed. I feel like I did a 180 in my boldness about faith, because I feel like it's different in other areas of the country, maybe because I love going to like Dallas and have a lot of connections down there, and I feel like they're a lot more open. But up in the Northwest, no one talks about it, and so. But I've seen that.
Me and Ricky were just talking about how crappy Portland is.
Maybe there's some connection there. But yeah, well, that's why we're doing it on this side, man.
Exactly.
But no, I mean, it's
what
just
a
like,
difference a river makes, man. Like you cross that river.
You got that divide. There's a lot of Portland agents here today, so probably.
That was Ricky's opinion. I haven't seen Portland.
But one of the coolest things is that, and maybe because I feel like what you've been doing is probably very similar, started from a similar place, and that's being able to almost draw people in with faith. Like our banners out there, it doesn't say faith in God, it says faith in each other, and faith in ourselves, and faith in our future.
Yeah.
And be able to connect with them there, because I just have met so many people recently who feel that they don't want a relationship with God or don't believe in God, and it's because of a past religious experience or church experience, bad church, we call it Western Christianity or whatever, you want to call it. And so what, with your event and what you've done, like, can you share?
Yeah. So here's my thinking is that there's lots of thoughts on whether or not church is correct today. You'll have different guys like Francis Chan who think that, the mega church shouldn't exist and that we should be back to house churches just like in the early, times of the apostles. But my thinking is this, like, it is difficult to get somebody to go attend a Sunday service, and if you do attend a Sunday service somewhere, it's tough because you're not going to talk to the pastor. You're probably not going to really meet people. Most people just go in and they go out and they think they're good. So it doesn't serve a lot of purpose in many cases. And when you actually study scripture, you realize that Jesus never called us to just invite people to church on Sunday. Like nowhere in the Bible is that a thing. Okay. Our job is to bring the kingdom directly to them where they stand. So like at Wealthy Kingdom, our nonprofit, literally the tagline is bringing the kingdom to the marketplace. I'm going to go direct to them where they are at today. So where are the people at? I mean, they're on social media, right? We started 50 Bible studies last year in people's offices, at their homes, right? Because that's an easier, invite. Like, yo, dude, we're going to go meet for an hour at my office, man. It's a bunch of other entrepreneurs. We're going to go just talk life and, we just get transparent and vulnerable. And like, it's just a place for people to share and really grow and, open up. And this didn't start as like an initiative. It's just something I did for the last 8 years. I've been hosting Bible studies for years and I've watched people saved. I've watched marriages restored. I've watched everything. And I know it works because I'm a testimony of that and they are too. And it just occurred to me because people were like, bro, where can I join one of these? Does my church have it? And I'm like, most don't, no. I guess I'm gonna have to just start it. So like, it's just one of those things where it's like God gives you more skill set. He's like, Ryan, if I blessed you enough to be able to get attention and do marketing, and I blessed you enough to be able to throw big events and start communities and other things, you don't think you could start some Bible studies, in these other states? You already start these meetups and freaking real estate stuff. Why can't you start a Bible study? And I was like, what? I don't know. Like I could. And so, it's just walking in obedience to what God's calling you to do with new circumstance and new, and that's what stewardship is, right? Like the more the Bible talks about if God can trust you with a little, he can trust you with much. And so he tests you with a little bit at a time, and then he keeps putting more on your plate to see if you're still stay obedient with that. And so like for me, I realized that you need to meet people where they are in order to bring them the gospel. You can't rely on pastors and everyone else to try and bring them the gospel. You need to do it. Now, most people are scared because they're like, well, I don't know exactly what the Bible says. I'm not actively even going to church myself. I'm not even living the right way myself. And I always say that's okay. God didn't call perfect people to go out there and spread the gospel. These dudes in the Bible are so messed up, it's insane. The number one most written guy about is King David. And this dude literally took some dude's wife and murdered him to cover it up. Okay. So these guys are jacked up, and we're concerned because we don't know, we don't have all our verses memorized. Right. I'm like, just show up and serve and show people love, and like the rest will follow through. Right.
Amen.
So like, if you just bring it to them, lives are going to be changed. And so that's like what I'm trying to do with this event is like, man, dude, I'm going to meet them where they are. They think they're coming for a business trip or a business event. Well, guess what? Gotcha. I'm going to bait and switch and give you the real truth. And then, that at the end of the day, let the cards fall where they may. I've done my job in preaching the gospel, and, people can receive it or not, and it's all good. But, yeah, there's just so many thoughts to it.
Man, I love that. I think that that's so needed. And it's so funny because, I mean, I've obviously seen you online for a long time now and stuff like that, but I didn't know that about you until way far more recently than I did. And we've been doing this thing. And then when I saw that, I was just blown away because I think I feel like I've only been able to taste a little bit of this because it's like a tiny, small town and your events are bigger and you've got that presence online. But man, being able to do that gives me the opportunity to have these one-on-one conversations and be able to actually meet them in that moment. And to me, just being vulnerable and sharing your testimony, and man, I feel like there's just an energy that can be caught by individuals that maybe need to give this spiritual thing a second chance.
Yeah, no. And I think, people will be impacted by what you do, not what you say, right? So it's by the way that you live your life at the end of the day. And so, for me, the definition of sanctification is becoming more like Jesus every day. And so if I am trying to become more like Jesus every day, well, it's like my life should reflect that. It shouldn't just be like, being stagnant and not growing. Paul talks about it with, these new Christians. He's like, guys, literally, this is like what Paul says. You got to stop drinking off your mom's tit and drinking all this milk and like eat solid food. Literally. He's like, you got to stop, because there's so many Christians who are like, oh, well, I believe in Jesus, all good. And they don't want to grow. There's real estate agents. Dude, I got a few deals. Like, I'm good. I'm chilling. Like it's all the same mindset of not wanting to grow and become the best that you could be. And I believe that it's just pure disobedience when you're not pursuing to become the best version of yourself. Like, it's actually
just kind of satisfied with where they are, or they're just not fed up with their circumstance enough to make the change to continue to grow. Yeah, dude. Like, realizing that what you're doing is got to turn into the next chapter and start doing what you need to do to grow, going to Bible studies or whatever. I mean, they're not willing to do it because they become lazy and satisfied. They say they want to change, but then there's a big difference in knowing, like I said on stage, and actually doing it. And they're not following through with that part because they say they want it, but they really don't want. It's like I want to do this. Oh, we'll come to the Bible study.
Bro, let me tell you something about that. So I've been holding Bible studies for 8 years now, and it's the same conversation over and over again. I'll tell them, I'm like, look, we have Bible study once a week. The time don't change. It's the same time every week. It's 1 hour. And then people will be like, well,
you hold them there at your office in person?
Yeah, at my office in person. Nothing changes, right? And so you'll have like realtors be like, oh, dude, like, can't make it this week. I got a showing. I'm like, why'd you schedule a showing during Bible study? Like, clearly it just shows your priorities. you think that this showing, which by the way, probably not even going to lead to a
Well,
contract
and you know
or
what's so
nothing.
funny about that
Yeah.
is if they told the buyer when they set the appointment, if they said, "Hey, I've got a meeting at that time. Can we do it at this time?" They would have.
I go to Bible study every week
99%
at
of the
this time.
buyers would have been like, "Absolutely, we can do it at this time."
Exactly.
They don't even ask to try to protect their
time
schedule.
No. And so I don't want to say I guilt trip them, but I'm just like, dude, this is 1 hour a week. You show houses the other 40 hours a week. Like, you can't block this part off. It's not that important to you. That's what it comes down to. And that's just a sad thing with priorities, man. Is this how people are?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I want to keep this conversation going longer. I feel like we're doing it kind of a just disjustice, but I got to get down there. I want to finish with just this last question for both of you because I'm just curious. When you say you feel like God spoke to you and told you what maybe the next move was, or how does that come to you guys, and how would you best describe that?
I can say I've only, like, in my mind, audibly heard God speak a couple times in my life. And it's not, like I said, it ain't often, but it was always big things that I had prayed about. You know, the first time it happened in 2014 when I was on my 1-year anniversary with my wife, and I was flipping couches. I already failed as a realtor, and I was just like, God, I don't know what you want me to do, but I feel like a failure. Like, and I'm living life the right way. You know, I'm not doing drugs. I'm like providing. And I was like, God, like, I just feel like you've called me for so much more. And I audibly heard in my mind, like, real estate. And I was like, real estate? I already failed at that. Freaking, I hate real estate. I did.
So you had your license and then you got out of it, and then
I just wasn't selling houses. I still had a license, but
you weren't. But you didn't, like, you weren't flipping while you had, like,
no.
like left as an agent and then flipped couches
I flipped
and then
couches
weren't even
for
thinking
years.
about flipping. See, I thought you had your license and kind of like,
No.
oh, this flipping thing's great. I'm gonna get out of.
No, dude.
Oh, wow.
I was a realtor for like 2 years. Quit. Held my license, but didn't do any deals. And then I started flipping couches.
Went back to couch flipping.
Well, no, then I transitioned to couch flipping. I did that for like 2-3 years. And then it was during that time where I was like, God, I'm not going to flip couches the rest of my life. Like, what do you want me to do? And he was like, real estate. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. And then, dude, I literally had a prophecy spoken over to me on this guy on a plane. You know, so we're going back home. This is a longer story that I'm really cutting up. But I tell my wife, I'm like, Mindy, you know, God told me that I'm going to flip houses. Like, that's what we're going to do. And she was like, okay, whatever. And I was like, here's the thing. I'm going to have to max out our credit cards to do this. Like, I don't know any other way to get money. And she's like, okay, whatever. So we're flying back to Vegas and we're in New Orleans. So we're like kind of near you.
Yeah.
And we're sitting in separate seats because I was too cheap to, like, you know, pay for, you know, whatever seats. And I'm sitting next to this old guy, and he goes, hey, what you reading there? And I was like, reading a book by Brandon Turner. And I was like, oh, I'm learning about how to buy houses with no money. And he was like, hey, I don't ever really talk to people on planes, but I want you to know that God told me to tell you that you're going to be very successful in real estate investing, and you're going to change a lot of lives. And this was 10 years ago.
That's wild.
Yeah. And it was on a plane. Mindy will tell you. And I was like, whoa. I was like, all right, that was the confirmation I need. Like, I knew, but that was like the nail. Like, all right, go and do it. And I still have the email to this day because I emailed him after because he was like, dude, if you need anything, I'll teach you creative finance and sub 2 and all this stuff. I had no idea what he's talking about, dude. Back then, he was like, we do these wraparound mortgages. And I was like, I have no idea what you're saying, but that's what I'm going to do. And that was the first time I really heard him give me a clear direction on what to do.
Yeah. I've never had anything direct like that, but there's been the moments, you know, where I quit drinking and stuff. And then,
I mean, you saw Jesus in the ceiling, dude.
Yeah. I didn't hear anything. Like, an old guy didn't come to me, but
an old prophet.
But I read the Bible every day. And if I don't, I feel off.
Yeah.
And it relinquishes my worry, right? It makes me feel like everything's all right. Everything's going to be all right. You know, and that, like, this whole thing comes down to, like you said in the very beginning, getting people together, and that people really undervalue the power of like community. Like people go to church and they go and then they leave. They don't really like try to meet the other people there.
Yeah.
Man, it's so powerful. You know, the more people can get together on the same page. And so that's kind of what, you know, like I'm constantly transforming. And one direction I'm going in is to just continue to build this community that I'm building, and try to be more deliberate around trying to like bring everybody together to actually like collab, you know, on life and stuff.
Our motto, man. Together we rise and we thrive. Well, I appreciate you guys. I am getting rushed out of here. I want to talk to you guys both more about that, though. 'Cause, maybe not on camera, but shoot. I appreciate it, guys.
Welcome to the KFA podcast, where our mission is to keep faith alive by kicking ass.